As the sun begins to set on the city of Greenstown, through the city's streets walks our story's protagonist known as Hack, the impid cowboy. Hack then enters a recreational facility where three gentlemen are playing poker. In previous years, these recreational facilities were known as bars, before the prohibition of course. After the four gentlemen were playing for a moment, two of them become upset and stop playing as they claim that Hack the cowboy is cheating. One of the players attempts to confront Hack about this, but Hack states that he is lying and that they are simply upset that Hack won and took their money. After Hack leaves, another of the players comes back to converse with Camper about what they should do. Hack begins walking back to his apartment through the dark alleys of the city so that he's not questioned by any martial soldiers or guards on his way home. He is quickly stopped in the alley by Camper and Sergio, the two poker players. The two gentlemen state that they want their money back, which of course Hack refuses, stating that he won it fair and square. Camper and Sergio responded that they only wanted their money back, not his life. But if he made them, they would be willing to take both from him. Hack responded by calling Sergio's mother a fat, unruly muffalo. This sparked a bit of anger and a fight ensued. Unfortunately, Hack was stabbed several times. He was unable to defend himself as he was unarmed. He had a pistol, but the marshals had confiscated all the guns from citizens. The two men fled the scene as Hack lay there in the alleyway bleeding. They had left him there to die. After lying there for quite a while, a mysterious stranger came from the shadows of the alleyway, scooped Hack up, and ran off with him. The mysterious stranger approached Hack in the tent as he lay there, recovering from his injuries slowly but surely. Naturally, of course, Hack asked who she was and what was going on. She explained, of course, that her name was Carol and she found him in the alleyway after his stabbing. She also explained that he has an infection, so he might find it hard to stay awake. By this point, they've been traveling for quite a while. Weeks have passed, and Hack has been in and out of consciousness, though his infection does seem to almost be completely gone. Carol continues walking through the soggy, wet ruins of a once great city. She approaches Hack for conversation as she notices that it appears he is almost completely recovered. Hack thanked Carol for saving his life, but he wanted to know why. He said that he's done terrible things and he felt that he deserved to die in that alleyway. Carol explained that she was once a pirate and she too had done such unspeakable acts, but everyone deserves a second chance. Hack then asked her, where were they? Carol explained to him that they were in a city that was once forgotten. This was her father's city, his empire. Carol took Hack to the center of town near her father's tomb to introduce Hack to their traveling companion, a Thromboian named Sherd. Sherd is the daughter of a once great Thromboian chieftain. She and Carol plan on starting their own tribe. Their ambitious idea is to become a massive farming tribe that will take care of the sick and the hungry on the planet. The ongoing war has made life on the planet a living hell for the Thromboian tribes, so they plan on changing that. We named ourselves the Sherdish tribe, or the tribe of Sherd, as it were. But simply calling ourselves the Thromboian tribe is not going to actually make us a legitimate tribe. We need recognition from other tribes. Luckily, on our way to the Stardust Logging Company, Sherd and Carol had already sent word to a local tribe about a bit of a parlay. Now, of course, though, while waiting on that tribe to arrive so that we can discuss, we began our farming empire. Sorta. Everyone starts somewhere, and we're starting with a very small little field that we plan on planting rice in. Not to mention, we are currently living in the ruins of the old logging empire, so most of these buildings are about half burnt down or blown up, so it's going to need spruced up a little bit. But of course, I do have the utmost faith that Hack and his two new companions are going to be able to create a functioning tribe here, and not only that, but a farming empire. The next day, after everyone woke up, Carol began tilling the field so we could finally began planting our very first rice crops. Now of course we do plan on feeding the other Thromboian tribes and the starving and whatnot of the planet, but first we're gonna have to be able to feed ourselves. I also got some good footage of Hack cutting down a tree just outside of their rice field, which actually marks the first time we've seen anyone cut down a tree in the logging empire since the original series, which of course is a very monumental occasion. Now if you're completely unsure as to what I'm talking about, so this farming empire series is actually the 4th series in our RimWorld expanded universe, and you should really go back and watch those other series because we have reoccurring characters, it's all one big shared universe, and it's a whole lot of fun. But if you don't want to do that, there is also a video where I explain everything that has happened before this. But we are now going to begin refurbishing the logging empire. We are starting with the old production building. We're going to turn this into our kitchen slash dining room, mess hall, that kind of thing. It was some time after this we ended up having a soldier from the RimWorld Marshal Service come to investigate the ruins of the logging empire. Obviously, of course, we're not looking to get into a war with the Marshal Service at this time. If that needs to happen, we can always do that, but right now we're just trying to build our farming empire to take care of Thromboians and the starving people. So instead of engaging with the soldier, we decided that we would try to hide, but unfortunately Carol was having a mental break and was spotted by the soldier, who then began opening fire on us. We took cover in some of the ruins, but unfortunately Hack did not have a ranged weapon, he simply had a knife. So as Sherd began firing at the soldier with her bow and arrow, Hack had the idea that he would try to ambush the soldier from the side. This was actually a pretty good idea, as with it being dark and the rain, he should be able to mask his position and sneak up on the soldier, and luckily for us it seemed to have worked. Hack lit the soldier on fire and then began engaging in hand-to-hand combat with him. Luckily the soldier did not have any melee weapons. Shortly thereafter that, with a little bit of assistance from Sherd, we managed to take the soldier down and we did not kill him. Hack picked up the soldier's pistol and began hovering over him. He had a decision to make. Though the soldier had attacked us first, he was only doing his duty. It's possible that he thought we were rebels. Maybe he would have been friendly towards us if we would have engaged him in another manner. Hack would feel guilty if he killed the soldier, but unfortunately he ended up having to do so. Hack was contemplating his actions out there on the battlefield today. The others reassured him he had made the correct decision because that soldier most definitely would have left and brought back an entire army with him. Of course, Hack is no stranger to killing martial soldiers, but we're trying to be better. We're trying to build a better world, away from war and death. We ended up getting our very first harvest of rice, which was perfect as it would sustain us, but not only that, when the tribe comes for a parlay, we will also offer it to them as a show of good faith. Now the rice is all well and good, but it's not going to do us very good to be eating raw rice, as that's going to taste like dog shit. So we had Sherd build us a beautiful fueled cooking table, that way we can actually cook it into meals. Lucky for us, we just so happen to have Carol, who used to be quite the cook back in her pirate days. She was throwing together some shrimp fried rice for us, minus the shrimp, so just fried rice. Sometime later, we ended up getting the friendlies who came to parlay from the Blue Stork Toxer, I believe is how you pronounce that? Probably not. Anyhow, though, they have came to discuss our recognition by the coalition of Thromboian tribes. The Blue Stork Toxer is actually a very ancient and traditional tribe with an ancestral claim to the planet of Degum. Sherd spoke with the tribe's representative known as Notris. She explained that her father was a great chieftain and that she claims to be our chieftain here, and this is her tribe. Of course, explaining that she would love recognition from the coalition of tribes, and to let her know essentially what the price of that recognition would be. Notris simply explained that he would go home and speak with the tribal elders and come back with their response. Of course, before he was able to depart, Sherd explained that she was aware of the issues they are facing with a famine currently, and wished to give him a show of good faith, a gift. So of course, Sherd instructed Hack to hand over the rice to the representative. It wasn't much, but it was something. It would at least feed a few Thromboians for a short period of time. Shortly thereafter, the representative and his tribal escorts decided to leave and go and speak with their elders about our tribe's recognition. So now, of course, we must patiently await their response. Of course, in the meantime, though, while patiently awaiting their response, we will be working on the logging camp to try and fix it up so it's a bit more suitable. We began working on a barracks, so as we get more tribes people, they'll have a nice place to sleep and lounge lounge around. We also began working on Carol's room. We thought it fitting that she should have her father Birch's old room. As she lay there in her bed, she found it crazy to think that so many years ago her father lay in this very same room, as she and other members of her family and the pirate camp plotted against him to overtake the logging empire. But in other less depressing news, it would appear that Hack and his silver tongue have somehow managed to woo Sherd, and the two of them have become, well, lovers. But then again, I guess I would also be swooed by a rootin' tootin' impig cowboy like Hack himself. I mean, he is a very suave lad, and to be honest, I'm extremely excited about this, honestly, because I can't wait to see what an impid Thromboian child hybrid looks like, assuming they have kids. Since Hack and our chieftain are now in love, and the two of them are going to need a place to stay together, we decided to build them a beautiful double bed in their own cozy little cottage. It seems fitting to me, at least, that we would give the chieftain her very own home as well. We've also done this for Carol, but mostly because she led us to the logging empire, where, you know, her father once was the leader, so it seemed fair. And might I just say that the two of them sure do look mighty cozy together in their new little home, and the new life that they're building together. It's all wonderful and beautiful and quite frankly, just fantastic. In the meantime, of course, though, we're going to need somewhere to put all of our weapons, apparel, our goods, and things like that. So one of the old buildings, we kind of refurbished it a bit and started building some shelves in there to use as a storage building. With things going so well, and the logging empire's transition into becoming the farming empire also going really well, Carol asked the others if they could have a bit of a memorial, a celebration for her father. They decided to create some paper lanterns in his memory. Though the two of them never got along and Birch was a horrible person by most standards, she still loved him. And of course, though Birch's demise at the hands of the pirates that Carol was once a part of, does make her feel quite guilty, she of course still cherishes the memory of her father. A few days later, we had a small group of rebels passing through our territory. We didn't interact with them at all, we just let them pass by. As mentioned, we are not interested in getting into these wars unless it is to save and protect Thromboians, or of course any other innocent lives. Now shortly after this, we ended up having the representative from the Blue Stork tribe come back with an answer from the elders. They met us in the center of town, and Sherd began discussing with another of the representatives about exactly what the elders wanted us to do in order to get their recognition. The representative explained that the elders stated they would only recognize our newly founded tribe if we done things in what they called the ancient way. This is a very barbaric tournament where one of our members must fight one of their members to the death. They have most likely chosen this as their preferred method, as they're most likely not okay with our Thromboian tribe including a human and an impid. Nonetheless, though, Sherd, as our chieftain, has accepted this offer and offered herself as the gladiator. She will defeat one of their members in combat to the death. Killut was chosen for the opposing side, as he was the largest and strongest member they had among them. During this tournament, the only weapons that were allowed were Thrombo horns. The two gladiators would wield one each and fight each other. The two of them came at each other as fast as lightning. Luckily, though, Sherd ended up getting the upper hand and took him down. Hack was a bit distraught seeing his new lover and chieftain act in such a way. However, the representative from the Blue Stork tribe was most happy with the result, and he was very proud to now officially recognize the sherish tribe as an official Thromboian tribe. They would now leave with their colleague's body to go and announce to their elders about the successful tournament. At last, our hard work has paid off, and we are now recognized as an official tribe by the Blue Stork tribe as well as the coalition of Thromboian tribes. Our next step and or goal at this point is going to be to attempt to join the coalition. If we can join the coalition forces, that will give us more and more manpower as well as resources to attempt to feed the hungry and downtrodden of this planet. At some point, of course, if we are able to join the coalition of tribes, if they give us that great honor, we may also have the opportunity to become a leader of the coalition of Thromboian tribes, meaning that Sherd would be heading the entire coalition of all Thromboian tribes on the planet of Degum, which essentially would make her the leader of all Thromboians. Yes, of course, these are extremely ambitious dreams that no doubt she will share with Hack tonight as they lie together in their cozy cottage. But of course, only time will tell if these dreams will become a reality. Elsewhere, a large group of martial soldiers traverse through the Noquan Desert. Their mission is to research an ancient Thromboian structure with some very thick walls, hence why they brought along their tank. All of the soldiers are heavily armed since most ancient Thromboian structures from their old civilizations are infested with massive insectoid creatures that are extremely dangerous. However, these soldiers are currently unaware that what they will find within this ancient structure is much, much worse and much, much more dangerous than any insectoid creature. The soldiers began setting up camp for the night just before preparing their tank to blow a hole directly through the wall of the ancient structure. After doing so, the commander ordered his soldiers to enter the ancient building. The sights within were like nothing they had found in any other Thromboian structures thus far. There appeared to be an altar-like shrine in the middle of the room with several sarcophagi all over the room. 4 braziers with a bluish-purple flame illuminated the entire room. One would be forgiven for thinking that these braziers were powered by some magical force that has kept this flame going, especially since it appears that these have been burning for thousands of years. However, it appears that they are actually powered by a constant source of chem fuel being pumped into them. We found several skeletons lying around the room as well, with a very strange armor that appears to be damaged in several ways. It was like nothing that we had seen before. The sarcophagi in the room were all empty, except for one in the back that seemed to remain closed. The commander ordered one of his soldiers to assist him in taking off the top of the tomb so that they may investigate the body that lie within. This would turn out to be a horrific mistake. Good morning, Degum! And what another bright and beautiful morning it is to celebrate under our great leaders. Unless you're in the labor camps, that is. Oh, I'm just kidding. They don't have the luxury of radios there, unlike all of us who are so grateful for another day serving the regime. Today's top story, Marshal Commander Ross says there was no fighting in the Noquan Desert and it was simply a military training operation. In his statement, he also said that if you find someone spreading disinformation about the event, report them to your local constable's office. Just remember, folks, if you hear your neighbor speaking out against the government, they're not your neighbor. They're your enemy. In other news, an uncontacted tribe of impids was recently found on the outskirts of the Noquan Desert. When a platoon of soldiers came to greet the impids, they began throwing rocks at them. This led to the soldiers having to gun down every man, woman, and child within their village. But luckily, the land that was confiscated from the impids is now going to be used for a factory, bringing many new jobs to the area. But folks, this has been your morning update. We'll be back at 5 o'clock this evening with more stories. This has been Leonardo Knight with your Regime Radio. Remember, folks, all hail the marshals, all hail the regime. Welcome back, one and all, to the RimWorld Farming Empire. We have a very busy episode ahead of us today. One of the very first things that we're doing in today's episode is planting a small orchard of apple trees. It's going to take quite a while for these apple trees to mature and actually produce apples, but once they finally do, we are going to be able to provide apples to every Thromboian coming and going. With today's episode, really what the plan was to just try to get the logging camp back up in working order, if that makes sense. So we started tearing down a lot of old structures like the bank. That way we can use the materials that we salvaged to build more walls and things like that for our own protection. Luckily though, a lot of the walls from the glory days of the Stardust Logging Company still stand. They're not exactly perfect and they need a few patches because there's a few holes in them, but at least we have what we have. Now, unlike the Marshal Service and the Rebels, our tribe doesn't exactly have the luxury of vehicles, so we're going to need some animals. We began building building a large pen for any animals that we tame so that we can ride them or carry our large food caravans to neighboring tribes and whatnot. Disaster struck though when a large portion of our eggplant crops ended up becoming blighted and we had to cut them. Unfortunately, before we could get there to cut those down though, many others were infected by the blight. But we have some very ambitious plans, and it's going to take a little bit more than a blight to stop us. Sherd ended up finding some wild horses nearby the logging camp. They weren't exactly perfect for food caravans and delivering food to neighboring tribes, but they would be perfect for us to ride around on, especially during battles. Later on that night, Hack and Sherd were tearing apart the flooring of what appeared to be an old production room. She explained to Hack that chieftains from the coalition of Thromboian tribes should be arriving any day now. They'll be stopping by to discuss the Sherdish tribe's possible acceptance into the coalition. But of course their acceptance into the coalition is going to depend on many factors, such as the fact that we don't have many Thromboians in our Thromboian tribe, and also that we're living in an old logging empire that is basically falling apart at the seams, which is another reason she is focusing so heavily on building defenses up around the logging empire so it looks more acceptable for a tribe. Unfortunately though, the coalition were not the only Thromboians deciding to pay us a visit. It would appear the Confederacy of Banah has sent a raiding party to attack us. The Confederacy of Banah is a sworn enemy of the coalition of Thromboian tribes. They completely despise each other, and now that we're attempting to join the coalition, it would appear that they also despise us. Luckily though, the Confederacy of Banah is not nearly well equipped as most Thromboian tribes. Nonetheless though, they are still extremely dangerous and should not be underestimated. We hid behind our defenses and began firing at them. Hack even attempted to spew flames towards them, but unfortunately he did not get a direct hit on anyone. We were then flanked from behind from the remaining tribe members. We managed to take down one of the tribe's people and the others began to flee. As they were fleeing, we decided to gang up on their armored wolf and kill it. Now we're not normally ones to kill animals for no reason, but this wolf posed a much worse threat than any Thromboians who were running away. Speaking of which, we took one of them prisoner and decided that we would try to recruit her. Not only would she be a wonderful addition to the tribe, but her presence would also help us with our acceptance into the coalition. Just after we had finally fended off the raiding party from the Confederacy of Banah, we began work on our southernmost wall once again. Having an expansive wall in the southern part of our farming empire is going to be extremely crucial for our safety. Not only, of course, will it protect us from any raids from the southern part of the colony, but just as well, this will force any raiders down that way to come out to the western side of the colony where we have our defenses. I get that it's kind of complicated to understand, so I decided to make a professional artist rendition to help you kind of visualize. Here you go. Sometime later, we decided to refurbish the old production room from the logging empire to get it back into working order for some stone production. Now I hear you say, Rat Knight, what the hell does stone have to do with farming? Nothing, to be honest with you, but we're going to use it for new structures and defenses and all that great stuff. We ended up having a bulk goods trader come from the Blue Stork tribe to, well, try and trade goods with us. Now, they didn't exactly have anything that we were interested in trading or bartering for, so instead of purchasing their wares and goods and things like that, we decided that we would just gift them some food. Now, truthfully, we did have quite a bit of food, but we still had to prepare for the winter, and with our eggplant crops being blighted recently, this was a bit of a sacrifice on our part. Of course, it was well worth it to see the small Thromboian children with full bellies. We ended up having Carol create some glass panes for us. Now, the reasoning behind this is because we don't have any way to grow crops in the wintertime when the ground freezes. So we plan on using these glass panes to make a beautiful greenhouse so that we can grow crops all year long. It was during this time as well that Hack ended up recruiting the Thromboian from the raiding party previously, who I am going to refer to as Fifth, kind of like how we refer to Hack as Hack, even though he has a massive ungodly name. And now with her finally recruited, Hack could also put his efforts and resources into assisting us with building that greenhouse we discussed. We decided to use the large building that the logging empire previously used as a warehouse, since it already didn't have any wood flooring in it, so there would be nothing we would have to tear up to begin planting crops. And also because it was extremely spacious already as well, meaning that we would have to do next to no work to expand it for more and more crops. We began tilling the soil within, and just as well we also began using the glass to build some beautiful skylights to let the sunlight in. After a while we finished a brightly lit, warm building, and we finally had our greenhouse. We started planting some pumpkin crops as they would have a large yield. Sometime later though, we finally had representatives from the Blue Stork tribe as well as several other tribes who were representing the coalition who came to talk with us about our acceptance. I think seeing something as simple as the chieftains and their guards walking towards us just shows the Thromboian culture best. There's so many different subcultures among the different tribes, and you can see it best in their armor and their headwear and even the weapons that they carry. We met the tribal leaders in the center of town, and Sherd appeared to greet them with what Hack described as an ancient Thromboian tongue that appeared to be unknown to him and Carol. They continued to carry out the conversation in this ancient tongue up until about the point they realized that Carol and Hack had no idea what was going on, and they had a gentle chuckle. Sherd explained to Hack and Carol that they were jokingly having a conversation about the snow and the cold weather, and that Chief Truss and the other chieftains were asking if there were a warmer place that they could have this conversation. All of the chieftains, including Sherd, headed into our dining hall where they would have a seat and continue their discussion in front of the warm glow of our fireplaces and our torches. There was a loud rumbling noise outside, and when Hack and the others got up to check, Chief Truss explained that this was simply another guest who would be attending the conference today. The helicopter landed, and out walked none other than Tree, Happy Oak, and Lurkot. They were the final guests for the discussions between the coalition of tribes and the Sherish tribe. They entered the dining hall and approached the table where Tree would take a seat next to Chief Truss as well as Hack. Needless to say that Hack was none too pleased to see his old friend here. Hack had a bit of an uproar and demanded to know why the chieftains would invite a rebel leader here without their consent. Chief Truss apologized and explained it was a short-notice decision as the rebels have been aiding the Thromboians for years against the Marshal Service's evil regime. Following Hack's outburst, the chieftains ordered all of their men to leave the building so that they could discuss in peace without any more interruptions. Of course, before getting to the first order of business, Tree and the other chieftains thanked Sherd for allowing them to convene here in her territory. Chief Truss then explained that there was monumental news that they should all hear. He claimed that there was a Thromboian deity alive and walking the planet of Degum. This was extremely hard to believe, especially for Tree, as she's only half Thromboian, meaning that she doesn't exactly subscribe to the ideals of the others. Regardless though, Chief Truss explained to the others that this deity appeared to be some type of Thromboian goddess, and he stated that Sherd's request for acceptance into the coalition would have to wait until she met said deity. Once she met this Thromboian goddess and the goddess gave her opinion on the matter, it would be decided whether or not the Sherish tribe would be allowed to join the coalition of Thromboians. And so it was settled that Sherd would accompany Chief Truss back to a Blue Stork tribe village where she would then meet the Thromboian goddess. Just after the meeting was over, Tree approached Sherd to request a favor from her. To Sherd's surprise, Tree actually asked her to allow Lurkot to join their tribe. She states since he was enslaved as a small child and then rescued by Happy Oak, he's not very in touch with his ancestors or his ancestral heritage. Sherd, of course, quickly accepted. Tree also wished her luck on her journey to meet this supposed goddess. She explained that she did not believe in such things, but if it would help them take down the Marshals, it was worth it. After telling Hack and the others goodbye, Sherd prepared for her cold and long journey to meet the supposed goddess. Just after Sherd departed, the rebels were also preparing to leave the area. Lurkot began saying his goodbyes to his adoptive father, Happy Oak. I know that this is your journey, son, and I know that this is your ancestry and your heritage, but that doesn't mean that I'm any less upset about having to leave you here today to go on that journey by yourself. I hope to see you again very soon. I love you, son, and I'm proud of you. The two of them embraced each other with a hug just before Happy Oak and Tree began to depart, but Happy Oak had one last request before they left. He simply asked Tree if he could say hello to an old friend. He approached Birch's sarcophagi in the middle of town and began mumbling something to himself. Obviously, Tree cared very little, if anything, for Birch's memory, but she of course respected Happy Oak, and thus she respected his wishes to speak with his old, long-gone friend. Shortly thereafter that, the two of them began to depart the old logging empire that was once their home. The two of them loaded themselves into the helicopter along with their two rebel guard escorts who had accompanied them here just before taking off into the skies to head home. Back at the old logging empire, Hack, Carol, and Fifth all stood in the center of town to greet Lurkot. Hack, of course, explained to Lurkot as long as he didn't attempt to betray them, he could keep his head on his shoulders. And then he explained that if he did decide to attempt to betray them, that he would turn his head into a canoe. So I suppose you could say the two of them were getting along swimmingly. Carol said don't mind him, he's a bit rough around the edges, but you'll get used to him. Sometime later, Sherd and Chief Truss had arrived at a nearby village where the goddess had been staying. As they approached the village, you could hear the murmur of many voices speaking, but one stood out among them all. A very loud and protruding voice sounded almost as if they were giving a speech. As we approached, in the center of this very small, quaint village stood a very strange-looking Thromboian wearing metallic armor. It was like nothing that we had ever seen before. Sherd joined the crowd of Thromboians who were gathered around to listen to the speech from the so-called goddess. It was something of a sermon, but the words were not holy. Sherd expected the words from this so-called goddess to basically lift her up and give her almost a supernatural feeling. After some time, the sermon had finally ended. The mysterious Thromboian requested that Chief Truss and Chief Sherd approach her. She spoke in the ancient tongue, which further reassured us of her heritage at the very least within Thromboian culture. She began to explain that she was here to change things. She was here to take back the planet of Degum from the intruders who had conquered the planet in her absence. Long, long ago, Thromboians ruled the planet of Degum. The planet was beautiful, untouched by foreign contaminant. It was truly a utopia for all of Thromboian kind, until one fateful day, humans arrived. The Thromboian goddess explained that that was all she could bear to tell at this time. She gifted Sherd an ancient Thromboian bow. She said that Sherd's heart was pure. The tribe of Sherd would be allowed to join the coalition of Thromboians, even though they have filthy humans, impids, and half-bloods among their ranks. So long as when the time came that the tribe must be called upon, they would come. Sherd was extremely eager to join the coalition, so of course she quickly accepted these terms and then began to make her way home. Days later, Sherd had finally returned home, and she was extremely eager to let Carol and the others know what she had experienced. But of course, if we're going to become the massive farming empire tribe that we want to be, and that the coalition needs us to be, we're going to have to get down to business. Which brings me to a wonderful comment left by our good friend known as JT. JT here says that they think a Muffalo Ranch would be really cool. And you know what, JT? I 100% agree with you. Not only that, but it would be also super useful for meat. So we began taming some Muffalo for this exact reason. We also ended up having a caravan of desperate Thromboians who were very hungry, so naturally, of course, we gifted them what little bit of meat we could spare. Those same Thromboians actually provided us with information about an ancient Thromboian structure nearby if we were interested in investigating it. Sherd decided to go and investigate the ruins with Hack and Lurkot, as this could be the perfect opportunity to gain more favor with the coalition by finding some ancient ancestral artifacts or something. The three of them were armed and on horseback, and they began trotting towards the ancient Thromboian structure. The three of them began to wonder what exactly would they find within this structure. Lurkot recounted the time within the mining empire when they opened up one of these structures and it was full of insectoid beasts. Naturally, the group was a bit worried after discussing this encounter. Just after arriving, Chief Sherd ended up roping all of the horses together so that they wouldn't run off. Then she, Lurkot, and Hack met in front of the door of the ancient structure to discuss their plan. It was agreed upon by the three members that Lurkot would stay by the entrance and defend it from any enemies. He would also alert them if anyone were to show up. After this was agreed upon, Hack and Sherd entered the ancient Thromboian structure. Upon entering the structure, we saw what appeared to be some type of throne room littered with dried blood and corpses of Thromboians as well as insectoids. Luckily, we did not see any type of hive or anything for the insectoids, so we decided that we would continue our search. Within one room we saw what appeared to be some type of small arena. It too was also littered with corpses. Two of the Thromboian corpses within the room also had ancient Thromboian hammers. The hammers appeared to still be in good condition, so we decided to take both of them. Within another large room of the structure, we saw a couple massive works of art. They appeared to almost be something of a shrine, but not quite. The wording on these works of art were very strange. It was nothing like any ancient language that we had ever seen before. There were two other rooms left in the west wing of the ancient structure. We decided to enter one of them. Upon entering this room, there appeared to be several corpses littered throughout the room, but also we ended up finding several different types of ancient machinery that, you guessed it, we had never seen any technology like this before. It was very strange and foreign. One could almost say that this ancient machinery was alien-like in nature. But regardless though, we still had one more room to check out. Hack and Shirt rushed into this room and also did not find any hives or any insectoids. However, the room apparently resembled a room that Chief Truss had told Shirt about that the ancient Thromboian goddess had came from. Then all of a sudden we heard several gunshots outside. Just outside, it would appear that Lurkot was engaged in a shootout with two martial soldiers who had arrived. It was quite easy for them to get the jump on Lurkot as their uniforms are all black and it is becoming dark out. Hack and Shirt rushed outside to Lurkot. They all three jumped onto their horses and began riding off just after Lurkot had killed the two soldiers. It would appear that the marshal service had a similar idea to us. They had sent out a squadron of soldiers to clear out the entire structure and find anything within. But luckily we made it out with our lives. Hours later, a pristine martial commander known as Ross arrived at the scene. He and his soldiers began to enter the ancient structure, which was already under martial control. It appears that they already had a scientist assigned to looking into these ancient Thromboian machines, possibly to even attempt to reverse engineer them or see what they could make of them. Commander Ross said, "Do you think the experiment will work?" The scientist replied yes, but she stated that it would most likely use up all of the technology that they found within this structure. Commander Ross then stated that he would head back home to make preparations for the test subject. He ordered the scientist and the remaining soldiers to begin prepping every single piece of ancient machinery they could to bring it outside and then have it ready for an evac chopper that would be arriving very shortly. He said there's no way that we'll be doing this critical experiment in this damn dirty place. We'll need to move all the machinery back to a high security facility. Once we're able to deconstruct it, we'll take it to a sterile place where we can actually perform the experiment. Sometime later, our heroes finally returned home. They were extremely exhausted from their journey, but they were also very eager to share their story with the others. Shirt and Hack were also extremely excited to look at their new ancient Thromboian hammers that they had found within the structure. Shirt told Hack that the hammer suited him, even though it was a bit strange to see an impid cowboy using an ancient warhammer. He of course was flattered by the comment, but he said he didn't take it for himself. Hack walked into the dining hall where Lurkot was eating a meal, tossed the hammer down at his feet and said, "You earned this today, kid. You deserve it a lot more than I do." "Are you sure that your experiment will be successful, Doctor?" "Well, I'm as sure as I can be, given our limited understanding of these ancient machines. Try not to worry so much, Commander. I'm sure he'll be fine." "Ha! I care not for Hawthorne's health, Doctor. This experiment could change the world. The regime could rule this planet with an iron grip if we could implement this onto all of our soldiers. Well, we still have a lot of testing to do before that point, Commander. Come with me to my office and I'll show you our files." Welcome back, one and all, to our RimWorld Farming Empire, Episode 3. We begin today's episode by harvesting many a eggplant for our own consumption, but also for the consumption of the starving Thromboians. It was during this time of the harvest, though, that we had some massive news. Hack decided that he would propose to Sherd, and she accepted. So it would seem that we could expect some wedding bells for the two of them in the very near future. The two of them decided to have a nice, intimate dinner together in the dining room to celebrate the occasion, just before going to lie down in their home. After entering their quaint and cozy little cabin, Hack explained that he wished to have a serious conversation with her. Hack wished to raise his concerns about blindly following this ancient Thromboian that claims to be a goddess. Sherd explains that she's not simply blindly following this ancient. She stated that this ancient had some type of knowledge of Thromboians well before humans and the other races came to the planet of Degum, and there was no possible way for her to know that unless she truly was some type of ancient deity. Hack simply explained that he doesn't want to be going to war with the marshals, and he doesn't trust this ancient Thromboian to keep peace among them. He says that he's a changed man and he doesn't want violence anymore. He simply wants to farm and take care of people. The conversation ended abruptly when Sherd explained that she's just extremely tired and no longer wishes to have this conversation, so the two of them went to lie in bed. As Hack lay there in the bed, he wondered if his wife-to-be and their chieftain would truly make the correct decisions when the time would come, or would she simply be the lapdog of some ancient being? Regardless though, the next day it was time for us to continue expanding our empire. We began some work on some more shelves in our warehouse so we could further our storage. Just as well, we decided that the old logging warehouse would be perfect to become a greenhouse so that we could grow more and more crops. It of course would need a little bit of patchwork with the walls, and just as well we would need to install some very pretty skylights so that the sunshine can come in, but obviously it was nothing that we hadn't done before, and once we had that completed, we began planting plenty of rice within. Then after some time had passed, it was finally time for us to reap our massive harvest of pumpkin plants from our other greenhouse. Now obviously we are going to be giving out these pumpkin crops to many other tribes. One such tribe actually does not have any animals available for a caravan, so we're actually going to try to drop these off to that tribe as soon as possible. They were known as the tribe of Ur, and we figured that Fifth and Lurkat would be perfect to drop the crops off to this very small Thromboian tribe. It would be a very good learning experience for both of them, as they're both new to our tribe, but Lurkat is also somewhat new to Thromboian ancestral culture. So the two of them loaded up the crops onto their horses and headed out. Lurkat and Fifth had been traveling for hours, with the two of them telling each other stories of their childhood. And then it was around about that time when the two of them saw a clearing in the forest and thought that it may be the perfect place to camp for the night. The two of them tied up their horses so that they wouldn't run away and began to lay out their sleeping bags. Hours later, after the sun went down, the two of them gathered around the campfire and began swapping more life stories. Lurkat wanted to know what was a beautiful and kind Thromboian woman like Fifth doing with such an evil and horrible tribe like the Confederacy of Banah. As it turns out, Fifth explained to Lurkat that she and her mother were enslaved by the tribe when she was just a baby. Lurkat, of course, could relate to this on a very deep level, as he too was also enslaved as a young child. This conversation, as well as the other conversations that they've had on this very long and cold trip, seems to have really brought the two of them very close, and they've really bonded together on this journey, so much so that the two of them have fallen in love. It was very late in the night, so the two of them decided that they would go ahead and lie down. They also had a very long trip ahead of them in the morning. The next morning, Fifth and Lurkat on horseback approached the tribe of Ur. The tribe of Ur was extremely small, so small in fact they didn't even have a proper village, they simply had tents that they would all live in. Lurkat and Fifth tied their horses at the entrance and began heading for the village center. A tribe's member warming up by the bonfire with her young daughter pointed the two of them towards the chief's tent. They thanked her for her directions and then entered the chief's tent. Upon entering the tent, Chief Maxie was huddled around a fire staying warm as his wife was cleaning her knife. After we approached, we began explaining to the chief that we were with the Sherish tribe. We had heard of a famine in these lands and we had brought plenty of crops for his people to eat, albeit for a short period of time, but unfortunately our resources would be spread quite thin defend this winter, as we also had other tribes to feed in the area. The chief was quick to ask what we wanted in return for all of this food, and Lurkat simply stated that we wanted nothing in return except to help our fellow Thromboians. Needless to say, the chief was flabbergasted by our good nature. After a very long and cold journey all the way back home, spanning over several days, Lurkat and Fifth had finally arrived. Needless to say, the two of them were very exhausted from their long journey and were extremely eager to finally rest. On their way to their room, they greeted Hack, who was in the hallway smoking a cigar just before bed. Finally, the two of them could finally get a good night's rest in a proper bedroom. No more sleeping out under the stars in the cold, snowy air. Finally a real comfortable bed to rest our weary eyes. We awoke in the middle of the night to sounds of gunfire in the distance. There were several sounds of people screaming and fighting as well. As we approached the commotion, we realized that it was a raid in the middle of the night by the Confederacy of Benace. Lurkat and Fifth quickly joined in with the others to fend off the raiders. After some time, it would appear that we managed to kill and injure enough of the raiders that they decided to flee, and we had arose victorious. We decided to take one of the raiders, known as Lot, prisoner, and we would try to recruit her. Sure, she tried to kill us, but we're all about rehabilitation here. You know, for most people. As for the raiding party leader, Sherd crushed his head like a melon with her hammer. A few hours later, Hack and Lurkat were discussing the battle over a game of chess. But the conversation quickly changed as Hack was more interested in gauging how Lurkat felt about this so-called Thromboian goddess. Lurkat explained that he had heard about the massacre in the Noquan Desert that the ancient Thromboian had committed, and he said that any god or goddess wouldn't need to use a rifle to do that kind of business. Hack explained to Lurkat that he and Carol have been discussing about this ancient Thromboian business, and that they're both a bit worried that Sherd's getting in over her head with it. Lurkat said that he was sure that Sherd knew what she was doing, and that nothing bad would most likely come from working with the ancient Thromboian and the Blue Stork tribe. Besides, he said, even if they were to go to war with the Marshals, the Marshal Service has it coming. They're an evil empire just waiting to be toppled. Sometime later, we ended up having a very large caravan from a local Thromboian tribe stop by. This local tribe had actually managed to tame and breed Thrombos for generations, it would appear. Unfortunately, they were a little bit out of our price range as for now, but we did end up giving them a good bit of food. Funny enough, they were actually a bit picky with the food that they were willing to accept. They wouldn't take any raw vegetables, so we ended up having to give them some pemmican. A bit strange for a caravan that claimed to be starving, but oh well. But just after the caravan had left, we began deconstructing some old logging empire buildings to make room for an animal pen. Unfortunately though, while deconstructing these old buildings, the roof collapsed on top of Sherd's head. Thankfully she was fine, and Carol rushed to her side to try and doctor her wounds. As Chief Sherd was healing from her wounds, Fitz set out to try and tame some animals for our ranch. We decided a good starter animal for the ranch section of the empire would be rabbits, since they basically just eat grass, have lots of babies, grow up, and then we eat them, rinse and repeat. Hack finally finished up the rabbit pen, and take a look at this. Boy, oh boy, might I just say that they look mighty happy in their little pen. Little do they know we're going to eat them. Alright, get back to breeding, you filthy rabbits. In the meantime, Carol decided that it was about time we lit up our beautiful farming empire with some lampposts. So she went building to building, creating these beautiful lampposts so that we can see our wonderful city in the dark. Not too long after this, we had some donkeys wander into the area and decide to join us here. They weren't exactly very fast, nothing that we want to ride into battle, but they would be perfect for hauling plenty of food to neighboring tribes. Finally, our farming and ranching empire is growing to an immense size. A size that I might add at this point is really becoming quite the contender for the old logging empire that stood in its place so many years ago. It was also around this time that Carol had actually worked up some schematics for some guard towers on our city walls. These guard towers would actually allow one of our tribe members to sit in it each night and watch out for raids from the Confederacy of Benace, or really any other people people who would wish to do us harm. The guard towers would have a window on each side, that way the guard could see out in every direction. We had created a guard tower on our eastern wall, but we also decided to build a secondary guard tower at our southern wall. It would appear that this side of the empire is more prone to raids. During this time as well, we were also doubling up on our city walls, that way we could try and reinforce them and make them much stronger. But we were quickly interrupted by some amazing news. Fifth is pregnant with Lurkot's child. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, glorious days. That's amazing. I'm sure Happy Oak will be extremely excited to learn that he is now going to be a grandfather. Lurkot himself was even so excited that he rushed into their room to build the baby a crib. Ah, nothing says I love you more than a crib built with your very own two hands. Ah, yes. I didn't have a father. Anyhow though, we began working on some city streets that would help us get around the place a lot faster and also keep the place a lot cleaner. It was also during this time that we were building the roads that Hack somehow convinced Lot, the raider who was previously trying to kill us, to join us. So we now have another wonderful addition to the Sherish tribe. Ah, things were really starting to look up for us. Late one rainy and soggy evening, Lurkot decided to take up his shift in the guard tower. He said to himself that he would ensure our safety and make sure that no raiders would sneak up on us again in the dead of night. No sirree, they would not get the drop on him. He would keep his new family safe. However though, poor Lurkot had no idea what was about to transpire this night. A squad of martial soldiers parachuted into the farming empire from the sky. This was Operation Pumpkin Fire. The marshals were tasked with burning down the farming empire to prevent us from feeding any more hungry tribes and thus increasing their ever-tightening grip on Thromboian kind. The martial squad approached our barracks where they assumed every member of the farming empire were sleeping. They began throwing Molotov cocktails at the building until it caught fire. They were going to try to burn us all alive as we slept. Thankfully though, as we were all sleeping, Fifth awoke to the burning building. As the smoke began to fill her lungs, she yelled for Lot and Carol and began to run outside so that she could breathe. Unfortunately though, Fifth had no idea that the marshals were waiting outside, and this turned out to be a catastrophic mistake. Fifth was dead. Hearing the gunshots, unaware as to what was going on, Lurkot, Hack, and Sherd began running into town. A massive gunfight would then ensue between the marshals and our farmers. This was an extremely bloody and chaotic battle, but we ended up killing the marshal captain, and thus we got the better of them. Completely unaware of Fifth's death, Hack, Sherd, and Lurkot began quickly trying to put out all the fires. Just as well, Carol was quickly trying to tend to Lot's wounds as they were damn near fatal. She had been shot several times by the marshals. But in the end, when it was all said and done, Fifth's body lay there in the rain, waiting to be spotted by the other farmers. Once they saw her, they were all extremely heartbroken with what had happened to their friend, but none of them were more heartbroken than poor Lurkot. Unfortunately, Lurkot would have the great displeasure of having to bury his lover, Fifth, as well as his unborn child. During the funeral, Lurkot was overcome with sadness and grief, but he was also overcome with hatred and anger towards the marshal service, much more than he had ever felt before. With Lurkot being so overcome by his own emotions, he was unable to give a speech at the funeral, so he gave the honor to Chief Sherd. Sherd talked about what a wonderful and kind person that Fifth was and how great of a warrior she was as well. She also mentioned how she knew that she would be a wonderful mother if she were to have been given the chance, but that opportunity was stripped from her by the marshal service. Lurkot vowed to make them pay for this. They had taken things from him before. His entire life, everyone has always taken from him from the moment that he was enslaved as a small child. But it was finally time for him to begin taking back. He would have his vengeance, even if it meant that he had to work with the ancient Thromboian that claimed to be some sort of deity, whatever it took. Meanwhile, in the city of Muffalo Point, Marshal-controlled territory, 4 Marshal guards are going about their nightly routines as a stranger approaches the city entrance. One of the soldiers attempts to interrogate the stranger, but she refuses to speak. causing the soldier to begin brandishing his weapon towards her. He threatens to kill her if she doesn't answer his questions. One and all to our dark and dreary farming empire. Fret not, my friends, though everything seems hopeless and depressing, this too shall pass. Only time shall heal the wounds that have been inflicted on our hearts after losing our wonderful friend Fifth. But of course, to begin the healing process truly, we must dispose of those who have inflicted these wounds upon us. Though we did manage to slaughter the martial paratroopers and their captain, their bodies still remain among our streets. Within Thromboian culture, there is no greater disrespect after death than to have your remains burned instead of buried. So that is exactly what we will be doing with them today. As Lot stands by the corpse fire, she vows that not only will we cleanse these marshals with fire, but we will cleanse the entire planet with fire from the marshal service. Not long after this, we ended up having a wild Thromboian man enter the area. He was more like an animal or a beast than a Thromboian, but we decided that we would try to communicate with him. He didn't speak any language that we knew, but Chief Sherd attempted to communicate with him through hand signals and also by offering him plenty of food, as being out in the wild, he's most likely starving. Another of our big things that we had planned on doing in this episode as well was building some skylights within our guard towers. These skylights will allow whoever is in the guard tower on their shift to look up into the sky and look for martial planes, helicopters, and things like that that may be too high that we cannot hear them. Because obviously we do not want any more martial paratroopers parachuting into our base and attacking us in the dead of night. We were also planning a caravan to a local Thromboian village that was dealing with a lot of famine and starvation. We were going to drop off plenty of food to them and also see if they had anything to trade. Now, of course, we like to give as much as we can to Thromboian villages, but doing a bit of trading with them as well is going to help their economy. And plus, whatever we end up buying from them, we can use back home in the farming empire, even some livestock, possibly. While we're on the topic of livestock, Chief Sherd has also commissioned a massive granary be built. That way we can store plenty of hay and things like that for all of our farm animals. At one point, Chief Sherd somehow managed to coerce Harris, the wild Thromboian man, to actually join us, which was perfect because Harris was a real beefcake. He would be perfect for some manual labor around the farming empire. In the meantime, of course, though, we continued to work on our massive granary up until the point that our caravan arrived at the local Thromboian settlement nearby. It was finally time for us to do a little bit of trading and also a little bit of gifting some food. We would end up gifting them about 580 of our freshest pumpkins. The pumpkins that are so fresh that they've sat in our food baskets for about a month or two, but that's okay. We don't have to tell them that part. Interestingly enough, they ended up having a hen and a rooster, both of which we ended up buying. This was perfect because we could start breeding them and we could end up having a bunch of inbred chickens. Back at home, Sherd had commissioned Lot to build some nice armor for our brand new pal Harris. Harris was a bit different from other Thromboians, so we wanted him to have some different armor than the rest of us. We ended up going with a dark medieval style armor for him that would protect all of his limbs and his toes and his fingers. It was also during this time that Hack began work on our chicken coop, which I might add was a wonderful suggestion from our good friend and viewer CVWP21, so thank you very much for the suggestion. This coop would be perfect for our chickens to have babies and those babies to have babies, and we could have all kinds of inbred chickens. I don't know if you can tell, but inbreeding animals is kind of our thing throughout these Empire series. During this time, we were also working heavily on our defenses as we were trying to prepare for any upcoming raids or attacks. But during the time of working on our defenses, Harris had somehow swooned Lot into becoming his lover. I suppose love knows no words, seeing how Harris only speaks with grunts and hand signals. But nonetheless, we were extremely happy for them. I mean, they only just met a few days or so ago, but that's okay. As a show of appreciation for all of their hard work, Chief Shirt herself decided to be the one that would build their double bedroll for them. And the two of them look mighty comfortable. It is a little strange that Harris is sleeping with his eyes open, but to each their own, I suppose. At one point, Carol came up with the idea to build a large prison. Now, of course, this was not for enslaving people or punishing people. This was for reforming people. Within these new prison walls, we hope to change people's hearts and minds and get them to join us here. Speaking of which, though, we have a raid from the Confederacy of Banah, so it looks like we may have plenty of members who are going to need their hearts and minds changed soon. Assuming we don't slaughter them on the battlefield, that is. Interestingly, within the raiding party, we were able to spot a chief. But this was not just any Thromboian chief, this was Chief Favin, a chieftain that was notorious for cruel and unusual punishments after capturing their enemies. We had to make her pay for her crimes against Thromboian kind. Carol came up with a plan. We would initiate a preemptive strike against them, weakening them just before they actually raided the farming empire. But of course, not only did Carol come up with this wonderful plan, she also decided that she, Harris, and Lurkot would lead this strike against the raiding party. Since Harris, being the big beefcake that he was and so heavily armored, he would be in the front line, as Lurkot and Carol shot at them from behind and also worked on maneuvers. After beginning the preemptive strike, it appeared that the plan was working. Our enemies were wearing some fairly bright armors and whatnot, so it wasn't too hard to see them even out in the dark with the glow of the moon shining down. The moon was illuminating the battlefield just enough so that we could get a clear shot at our enemies. And thankfully for us, this appeared to be just enough to kill several of them. Unfortunately though, we were quite injured by this point. Even our horses were very injured, so we had to make a strategic retreat. However, after retreating back to the safety of our city walls, our enemy became impatient. With many of their members getting killed by us, they felt that now was the time to strike with their overall group. Hack began spewing fire onto the battleground, trying to deter any Thromboian soldiers from coming directly at them. Their chieftain led the charge against us, many of them firing their arrows at us while the others made their way towards our city entrance. Even while on fire, their chieftain managed to break our lines. Luckily though, Hack and Sherd managed to down her, and then we began trying to kill her fleeing soldiers. With the majority of the enemy forces dead or incapacitated, we began rescuing our wounded as well as several of the enemy soldiers who we could try to patch up and hopefully also try to rehabilitate, even their chieftain. But in a very odd turn of events, it turns out that Chief Sherd and Hack decided to have their wedding shortly after the raid. So I suppose it's a bit of a marriage celebration, but also a celebration of defeating the Confederacy of Banah's chief. All of our tribe members gathered in our beautiful dining hall to witness the matrimony between Hack and Sherd. It was truly a wonderful and amazing event, and they all partied deep into the night. Later on that night, Hack and Sherd decided to join each other in bed as a married couple. And I must say, it must have been a very eventful night, because just after awakening, it appears that Chief Sherd is now pregnant with Hack's baby. And I must say that I personally am extremely excited. I cannot wait to see what this baby looks like. Now, some time later, Chief Sherd explained to Hack that we need to move the chief from the Confederacy of Banah to a much larger prison. Since she is such a high-value target, we will receive massive armies at our doorstep attempting to free her. Hack Hack was extremely concerned that the Blue Stork tribe that ran the prison wouldn't exactly rehabilitate the chieftain. After arriving though, Chief Truss assured us that this would indeed be the case and that no harm would come to the prisoner. Hack seemed extremely hesitant and reluctant to believe Chief Truss, but Sherd was his wife and also his chieftain, so he put all of his trust and faith in her. On the way to the prison, Chief Truss explained that Muffalo Point City had recently been liberated from the Marshal Service. As Hack looked around, he realized that the only people that were in the city were Thromboians, though. The lack of diversity within the city was not lost on him. Not long after, we arrived at the prison in the center of town. Before taking her into the prison, Truss explained that he must read off the charges, but instead he stood there silently and pulled out his weapon. Before Hack even had a chance to say anything to him or to run and try to stop him, it was already too late. The chief was dead. No trial, no attempt at rehabilitation. She had been executed. Hack was obviously extremely upset. Truss and Sherd explained that they only lied to him because they knew that he would not agree to what they had planned. Hack began an argument with the two chiefs about what they had done, and he was even so angry that he stormed off away from them. Just after Hack stormed off, Truss and Sherd began talking without him, of course. Truss explained in a very hateful manner that she had better keep her imp dog on a leash, because if he were to get in the way of the goddess's plans, they will be forced to put all of them down. Sherd explained that everything was still going to plan and that Hack would not be a problem for what they had planned. Truss said that that was good and for her to keep an eye out because before too long the goddess will be calling upon her and her tribe. But for now she must continue waiting. As you could imagine, there wasn't much conversation on the way home as Harris couldn't speak in their tongue and also Hack was extremely pissed off. Instead of immediately heading back home with Sherd, Hack decided that he would go into the dining hall and see if he could spot Carol. Luckily he did. She was relaxing at the dining table. Hack joined Carol at the table and began explaining to her exactly what had happened on their trip. Hack began expressing concerns to Carol that he wasn't exactly sure if Sherd was fit to be their leader anymore. Not only that, he was also explaining that he wasn't even for sure if she had their best interest in mind. Little did Hack know that within the dining hall, the walls have ears, and they surely listen. Lot immediately ran to the greenhouse where Chief Sherd was to explain to her what she had heard in the dining hall between Hack and Carol. Chief Sherd thanked Lot for her unwavering loyalty and explained to her and reassured her that she would handle this. In the meantime, though, we would continue expanding our farming empire. While Hack, Sherd, and Harris were away escorting the prisoner to Muffalo Point City, we had recruited the other Thromboians that we had captured in the raid, so it was time that we built them a proper place to stay. We decided that we would build them a very large and shared barracks, that way we wouldn't have to spend any individual time on upkeep with some individual housing. It would be much easier and much more sustainable with a large barracks, of course. For a very long time, we would continue our work into expanding the empire and making it a much more sustainable and hospitable place for our tribe. But of course, we had much to do. We had to tend to our livestock, continue working on our beautiful roads, our defenses, and just the empire in general with buildings and things like that and infrastructure. After a month had passed, we had completed a lot of work on our empire city, but there was still much to do. By this point, our livestock was nice and plump, so we decided to give a large shipment of our rabbits to a local Thromboian tribe. The only problem was they were extremely hard to reach. So we decided to implore some help from the rebels and their helicopter. Chief Sherd heard the commotion and came out with her bow raised. She realized quickly, of course, that it was simply Reek, Oakley, and Happy Oak coming to get the shipment of rabbits as they had discussed previously. She greeted them with open arms, of course, and Reek and Oakley shortly thereafter decided to go and begin loading up the rabbits as Happy Oak asked the chief where Lurkot was. She said that he was in the center of town and Happy Oak went off to go and speak with his son. The father and son duo were ecstatic to see each other once again and the two of them embraced one another with a warm hug. Happy Oak was a bit worried though as he explained to Lurkot that he could see it in his face that he had been through a lot in his time here at the farming empire so far. Lurkot simply agreed with him and said that we have much to discuss, father. very, very much to discuss. Happy Oak, of course, explained that they would discuss everything in due time. He also began to tell Lercat that his health was beginning to worsen, and he urged his son to come back home with him, even if for a brief period of time. Thankfully, of course, Lercat agreed to take a bit of leave from the farming empire for a while and come back home with his father. The two of them, as well as the other rebels, began loading up all of the rabbits so that they could take them back and drop them off at this local Thromboian village just before returning home. And I personally, as the narrator, am extremely happy to see Happy Oak and Lercat reunited once again, especially with Happy Oak being as old as he is and having his health issues with his heart. However, Happy Oak taking Lercat with him means that Hack and Carol have one less person in the farming empire that they can trust. Lercat is a very valuable ally to Hack and Carol as well, especially since he has ties to the rebels that Hack had cut long ago when he walked out on the bootlegging empire. Ties that we very well may need to call upon in the future. Good afternoon, Degum. This is your Regime Radio. We have some breaking news for you at this time. Commander Ross is confirming that a high-value Thromboian chieftain has been shot and killed. The chieftain, known to the Thromboians as Chief Truss, has been eliminated. This chieftain has been a prominent figure in what is now being called the Thromboian Uprising. The commander is also stating that this will be a massive turning point in the uprising. We here at Regime Radio, though, will of course keep you updated as more details are released. Some reminders, of course, from our great and loving regime. Remember, folks, if you see something, say something. If you were to spot any suspicious activity by any Thromboians, be sure to report this to your local constable's office. The suspected Thromboians will be detained immediately to remove the threat from society, ensuring that you can sleep peacefully at night. Also, do not forget that the annual resource tax collection will be taking place this Friday. Of course, if you are unable to pay the resource tax with livestock, crops, or even manpower, a simple payment of gold or silver will do. But this has been your Regime Radio. We will be back on bright and early in the morning with more updates and details about the assassination of the Thromboian chieftain, as well as the war against the rebels and the Thromboian uprising. And as always, folks, long live the marshals, long live the regime. Welcome back, one and all, to our RimWorld farming empire. We have quite a bit going on in the beginning of this episode. The biggest thing, as you might have noticed, is the miracle known as childbirth. Yes, indeed, due to the 1 month time skip near the end of last episode, it is actually time for Chief Sherd to have their baby. Hack is actually playing two roles here during the birth. He is actually the father, of course, but is also the doctor as well. Finally, after hours of intense labor, Sherd finally has their beautiful baby boy. A healthy, beautiful baby boy, I might add. Sherd requested that they give the child an ancient Thromboian name, which in the common tongue sounds like Fitzbiro, but given the interesting mutation with the color of the child's skin and the resemblance in the name, I'm going to refer to the child as Spyro. And I must say, I was extremely excited for this child to be born, and as was Hack and as was Sherd, as you can see. Hack wasted zero time and immediately began bonding with his son, as did Sherd. And my true hope is that this beautiful child can bring the pair of them together, and can also hopefully squash any escalation of the tension that's currently going on due to the Thromboian uprising and the goddess. But I suppose that only time will tell what amounts from this ongoing tension. Until then, of course, we must continue our farming empire, and continue we shall. We began planting plenty of rice in our secondary greenhouse to try and help us get through winter. Luckily, by this point, we have made plenty of repairs, and it is once again operational after the Marshall paratroopers attempted to burn it down. It'll take a lot more than a little bit of fire to kill out any of our ambitions. We are here to change the world and to feed the populace. But of course, speaking of which, we have our very own populace to feed, and we also have plenty of chickens, so Harris decided he would begin slaughtering some for us to eat. However, he seemed to enjoy it a little bit too much. Harris may be tamed, but he is still a beast. I suppose it's fine though, whatever satisfies his bloodlust and keeps us all from starving to death this winter. And I must say, we have done so much good with the farming empire. We have fed so many people who are experiencing famine and starvation, but constantly giving away our food is very hard for us to avoid such famines and starvations. So that is why Carol proposed the idea of a lifeline. We are going to build a telegraph. But to do so, of course, we are going to need plenty of components and steel to build a generator for power. That way we can actually power the telegraph. And I hear you asking yourself, what is the purpose of building this machine and how does that help you avoid starvation and famines? Who would you even communicate with? A good example of who we would contact is our valuable ally Lurkot within the Rebel Alliance. As an absolutely last-ditch effort, if we were all starving to death or needed some type of aid, we could contact them. Luckily, the mountains near the old logging empire have plenty of coal within them because in Birch's day, they didn't really dig that out and use it for machinery because, well, they didn't have the technology. They mostly burned wood, which means we have plenty of resources to keep us going for a very long time. Speaking of such resources as well, it is finally time for a harvest of our beautiful apple orchard. Honestly, it's a little bit early to be harvesting these apples. We should really wait until they're totally mature, but these are desperate times. Some time later, we ended up receiving a telegraph from the Blue Rock settlement stating that one of their friends were injured while traveling by the RimWorld Marshal Service and that if we would save them, they would join us. So we decided to send out a small group comprised of Harris and our two newest tribespeople to try and save this person. Besides, we could use all the help that we could get here at the farming empire, even with our limited resources. It was very unusual for the settlement to contact us here though, and they didn't have many details on the person that needed rescuing, but regardless, we decided to help. While our tribespeople were out saving the refugee, though, we ended up receiving a caravan from the Blue Stork tribe. The caravan was of course in need of food, especially with this very harsh winter killing most of their few and scarce crops already. Unfortunately, of course, though, we had very limited resources, so we didn't really have any food to give. Luckily, though, we ended up providing them with some of our livestock so they could slaughter them at their convenience to eat. During this time as well, the leader of the caravan provided Chief Sherd with information about Chief Trust being assassinated. He also explained that the Thromboian goddess is now the leader of the Blue Stork tribe and that she would be calling upon Sherd and our tribe very soon. Meanwhile, Harris and our two newest recruits begin to approach the incapacitated refugee. However, with that being said, even from a distance, we could tell that this was not the same person, even given the brief description that was described to us from the Blue Rock settlement. Nonetheless, though, this person still appeared to be very injured, so we decided that we would cautiously approach them. We offered to assist her, and of course she agreed. She began frantically explaining that she was attacked by a white figure, and she said that we were not alone. Fortunately though, we did not see this unknown attacker and we returned home shortly thereafter. It was quite strange as the refugee stated that she had no affiliation with the Blue Rock settlement, and after calling them back on the telegraph, they also stated that they had never contacted us. We began wondering if it maybe was some type of elaborate setup to see just what type of force we would muster to rescue someone, or possibly even who would come to rescue them. Nonetheless though, after returning home, things went back to business as per usual, of course. Until late one evening, on her shift in the guard tower, Lot spotted something way off in the distance. It was the goddess. She was standing out in an opening with two other chieftains and her guard. The very small diplomatic caravan was met at our southern wall of the city. Sherd herself even came out to greet the goddess personally once again. She seemed extremely ecstatic to speak with her once more. The ancient Thromboian was silent for a moment, but then she spoke. "I call upon you, chief, and I call upon your tribe, for you have made a promise to me, a promise to which you stated you would keep. Will you now keep your word to your lord, thy goddess, or will you betray my trust?" Hack seemed disgusted by the ancient's holier-than-thou persona. But of course, all at once, Chief Sherd reassured the Thromboian goddess that she would keep her promise to her. She then invited the goddess, the other leaders, and their escort to all come in somewhere much more comfortable and less cold so that they could discuss further, to which of course the goddess promptly accepted Sherd's generous offer. Hack and Carol of course were very worried about working with the goddess and these Thromboian tribes, let alone letting them into our homes. But of course, against their better judgment and advice, that is exactly what Sherd allowed them to do. They all gathered in the dining hall to begin discussing their plans. The goddess tells Sherd of their plan to attack a martial city. She claims that of course she needs the help of the Sherdish tribe. She states that other minor Thromboian tribes are no longer supporting her cause of cleansing the planet of these unholy races. She also states it appears rumors are beginning to spread and that the rebels are catching on to exactly what they're doing here, so they are now hesitant to assist them. She states that because of their dwindling numbers of soldiers, it is time that the Sherdish tribe, the farming empire, goes on the offensive with them. Sherd was more than happy to agree to these terms and to go off to war with the goddess and the others, but she stated that something would need to be done about her husband Hack, as he would not support this cause. The goddess reassured her that she would handle the impid cowboy. The group then began making preparations to head off to war. Just before leaving though, Hack and Sherd both would kiss their newborn baby son on the head and spend a few last moments with him before they headed out. Hack asked Carol to look over the child for him while they were gone. Carol reassured Hack, of course, that no matter what happens, she would take good care of their beautiful purple boy. She slapped him on the back and said, "Just make sure you come home in one piece." The two of them had a chuckle, and then Hack and Sherd began to depart. We gathered our soldiers just on the outside of our great dining hall. Sherd began to explain the mission to them as a liberation of the town from the evil martial forces. They had been subjugating the populace there for quite some time. We met up with the goddess and her escort just on the outskirts of town before departing the farming empire. By the time that we arrived, the city of Morrisburg was already under siege by the remaining tribes' forces in the coalition. Many tribes, as previously mentioned by the goddess, had already left the coalition due to her leadership. However, the martial soldiers were not alone in battling the coalition of Thromboian tribes. No, they were also being backed up by the Confederacy of Banah, who had also provided several troops to fight off the siege. Coalition forces were being slaughtered in the streets of Morrisburg. The martial soldiers and the Confederacy soldiers began to advance throughout the city to begin pushing the coalition out. Luckily for the coalition though, reinforcements had arrived. The goddess began liberating one portion of the city so that she could destroy the tank while we liberated another. After hours of battling and liberating the city from the marshals, we met the remaining soldiers in town square. Some of these soldiers were heavily armed with explosive weaponry, and they were becoming desperate. Unfortunately, one of the grenades landed at Nyber, one of our new recruits' feet, and detonated. We had finally managed to push back the remaining soldiers, those of which we did not kill, of course, and finally, the battle was over. The city was liberated. But after arriving in the town center, we saw that the goddess had lined up civilians in a row, none of which were Thromboians, oddly enough. Hack then began to question the goddess on exactly what she was doing with these civilians. The goddess stated that she was cleansing the city and the world of this filth. This was not a liberation. This was a genocide. Yet as Hack looked around, he realized that he and the civilians were the only ones that were shocked by this. Sherd, Harris, they all knew exactly why we were coming here and exactly what the goddess had in store for these people. The goddess looked at Sherd and into her eyes and said that it was time for her to let go of her impid dog. Hack began to beg his wife, "Please, don't do this. Think of us and our child." But unfortunately, his pleading would go upon deaf ears. Sherd then closed her eyes and gave the command. Our beloved impid cowboy was dead. The goddess then turned her attention to the innocent civilians. As it would appear, Hack and Carol had been deceived by the goddess and even by Sherd and their other tribe members. They all appeared to be extremely complicit, not only with what the goddess was doing to innocent strangers, but with their own friends and family. Even Hack, the father of their newborn child, was not safe. The goddess and the others began to leave the city. Their army had already began returning to camp some hours ago, so it was finally time for them to head back there as well. But they were not alone. They were being followed. The dark and snowy landscape gave Captain Hawthorne the perfect cover. His mission was simple. He was going to use the experimental weapon created for him by the martial scientist to disable and or kill the Thromboian goddess. The splash damage from the weapon managed to hit the goddess. Unfortunately, though, she was not dead as he had hoped for. However, it did appear that her escort had to drag her away from the scene because her armor had been disabled. Unfortunately, though, she, Sherd, and their escort managed to escape the area. Back home, Carol was tending to the young child when she received contact from the Rebel Alliance. It was Blitz who was contacting us, and he had stated that he had some horrible news. He stated that their spies within Morrisburg City confirmed that Hack was killed, and Sherd was nowhere to be found. And unfortunately, it appeared that our other tribes people were also absent from the city. Carol found it extremely strange that Hack's corpse was the only one to be found. She thought it may be possible that Sherd and the others were taken prisoner. Blitz stated that they would continue investigating the situation, and that if they were to hear something more, she'll be the first to know about it. Until then, they plan on sending rebel soldiers to the farming empire to ensure her safety with the child. One of the goddess's royal guards approached her as she lined the tent. He appeared to worry for her health. She simply stated that her armor was damaged and it would take 4 or 5 days to recuperate. She said during this time she would be extremely weak and but a fraction of her normal strength, because throughout all these years her armor was the only thing that had kept her alive. She said while in her sarcophagus before being awoken, her armor kept her in something of a cryostasis, and that ever since she awoke her armor has been feeding off her life force, slowly draining her. Her royal guard reassured her not to worry. They would step up all the guards throughout the camp, that way we could ensure her safety. However, the goddess, oddly enough, advised against doing this. She said to let the men sleep, for they could not stop what was to come. Her royal guard was obviously very puzzled by this request and began asking her more and more questions about what she meant and what she would like for them to do. She simply asked him to leave her now, as she was very tired and needed to rest. There would be much to do within the following hours. Immediately after ensuring that Carol and young baby Spyro were safe and sound here, they began helping out around the farming empire with hauling, production, and things like that. Unfortunately, they could not spare enough men to send an entire team to look after the pair, but they did manage to send Reek and Blitz, who we all know are seasoned rebel soldiers. Just as well, they also sent a promising rebel soldier by the name of Nicholas. Carol already felt much safer with the trio of rebels around. Now, we do need to keep in mind, Carol is not some weak damsel in distress. No, she is a seasoned fighter herself. However, of course, with the Confederacy of Banal and several bandits lurking around this region of the planet, she would not be able to stop an entire raid on her own. Just as well, she thought whoever killed Hack and possibly kidnapped her other tribesmates could very well come back to kill her or kidnap her. Now, the current whereabouts and status of our other tribes members is unknown to the rebels and to Carol at this time. However, we are aware of poor Hack's fate, and due to the fact that he died during a battle, we are unable to recover his body. So the rebel soldier Nicholas was actually kind enough to build a memorial statue for us of Hack so that we could place it in the center of town. Though his body is gone, we hope that his spirit may forever live here at the farming empire and throughout our hearts and minds. This statue will forever be a symbol of kindness and hope The same kindness and hope that Hack shared with everyone throughout his day-to-day life. Now with our memorial to Hack complete, we are going to switch gears a little bit here, because we do need to continue our important work throughout the farming empire, and the rebels are going to be perfect for helping us out with that. Now one of the first things that we're going to be doing today is taming some boomalope, and this idea actually came from our Discord member, Gog Eode. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I am terribly sorry about that, but thank you for the wonderful idea about boomalope in the farming empire. I think they are going to be perfect. One of the biggest things that we are going to be using the boomalope for is the fuel for our helicopter that the rebels have brought. Just as well, of course, we could supply our rebel allies with fuel or even sell it to other settlements for silver. At this point, I was extremely thankful that the rebels had arrived, because we ended up having a raid from the Blue Plain Bandits, who are actually a scavenger group of bandits in the area. They've mostly been known for ambushing very small caravans of unsuspecting merchants, but if they find the time is right, they very well may try to attack a settlement such as this when they believe that all of our warriors are gone. And do not be fooled by their appearance, though they seem extremely disorganized, and even some of them carrying some prehistoric looking weapons such as flintlock pistols and rifles. They are still extremely deadly. As they approached our city entrance to the north, we immediately began opening fire on them. They all rushed to cover behind trees and rocks out in the dark. It would appear that they were not expecting us to have any allies here. Reek and his men fought side by side with Carol deep into the night, killing several of the bandits. As mentioned previously though, these bandits were extremely resilient. Even as several of their comrades fell, they still stood against us. Up until the point we had killed so many of the bandits, they were forced to make a retreat. We found several of the bandits groveling out in the fields for their lives as Reek approached, but he had no mercy for them, only death. Though in the end we had arose victorious, several of the rebels, as well as even Carol herself, were very injured from the bandits. So she, as well as Blitz, made their rounds tending to the wounds. Later on, Rebel Intelligence had actually told us about a small tribe of Thromboians in the mountains who were experiencing some severe starvation and famine, and of course things like that. So I thought this the perfect time to use a wonderful idea given to me by one of you guys. Our good friend, I think your name is pronounced Stein, it may not be, I don't know how to pronounce names, I'm so sorry, says that we should airdrop supplies to tribes that are hard to reach, and I completely agree with you, so that's what we're going to be doing. So Reek and Nicholas loaded up plenty of rice into the helicopter, as well as some herbal medicine, so that we could drop it off to this tribe. They were known as the tribe of Menace, a mountain tribe that hardly associated with others. With yet another Thromboian tribe medicated and fed for this season, we could continue our extensive work on improving the farming empire. One such improvement that we were making were some dirt roads around our animal pens to ensure efficient mobility throughout the entire empire. We also ended up having a trade caravan from a local settlement stop by. I suppose that they weren't hungry or had too much pride, because they wouldn't accept any food. Luckily though, they ended up buying several weapons from our storage facilities, and that gave us a good bit of silver. We also decided it would probably be a good idea to repurpose the barracks that Chief Sherd had built into something like a med bay or a hospital. Since we don't really have that many members who are going to be sleeping in here, and we're going to be getting injured throughout raids and things like that quite often. Sometime later, we ended up having a massive flash storm happen at the farming empire, causing a great wildfire just outside our city walls. Blitz and Carol ran outside next to the walls as fast as they could and began beating out as many fires as possible to ensure that it didn't spread and burn down our city. Not that it's really that big of a deal. The majority of our walls are built out of stone and they're connected to the mountainside, so we should be fine. We also ended up dubbing this fire the Great Forest Fire of 5548, a story that we'll tell our grandchildren about, I'm sure. And while we're on the topic of children and grandchildren, I wanted to bring up the fact that since Sherd is not here to breastfeed young Spyro, we ended up making plenty of mushy baby food to shove into into his little purple mouth. And might I just say that he looks to really enjoy it. I mean, his taste buds haven't formed yet, so he would probably eat just about anything, maybe even a rock possibly. But it is nice to see that he and Carol are bonding. Though neither Hack or Sherd formally asked her, I do like to think that she is a bit of a godmother to the child. Now speaking of Sherd, she is still missing, so we decided that we were going to go out to some local ancient ruins to see if possibly she were there with our other tribespeople. Carol thought that this was very possible. Maybe after the battle, the Thromboian goddess sent Sherd and the tribespeople to some ancient ruins to try and find some artifacts or something. So naturally, of course, on a dark and stormy night, she and Reek boarded the helicopter and arrived at these ruins. However, shortly after arriving, we could tell that this place appeared to be occupied. These ruins were not empty. This looked to be some type of base. We began to think that maybe we should just leave, but if this were some type of enemy base, it is very possible that Sherd and the others have been taken prisoner by some other group. Upon arriving in front of the base, we ended up spotting a Confederacy of Banah tribesperson and engaged in a firefight with them. Surprisingly, there was only the one soldier guarding the entrance to the base. It is possible that their other forces had went off to fight in the battle at Morrisburg. Regardless though, after killing the soldier, Carol and Reek began devising a plan on clearing out the base. They both entered and immediately began engaging with enemy forces. We encountered a Confederacy archer and immediately began melee attacking her until we defeated her. We considered executing her, but with limited time we began entering other rooms. We encountered two Confederacy torturers who were wielding massive warhammers. Thankfully though, Carol and Reek managed to get the better of them and we defeated both of them, even killing one of them. We were afraid that we would find Sherd or the others in here being tortured, but unfortunately, or luckily, we didn't find her or anyone else. We did however find the bodies of one rebel soldier and two marshal service soldiers that appeared to have teeth marks and gashes. It would appear these soldiers here are eating them. We began clearing out other rooms to look for more of these sick cannibal bastards, but unfortunately, or luckily once again, we did not find any of them. We did however find their stash of riches. There was a steel safe with 1,000 silver within. We decided that we would take it for ourselves. We finally went into the last room of the ancient ruins, and there wasn't really anything in there except several different types of weapons that the inhabitants of this base have been using. However, with that being said, we did notice a bit of discoloration on one single part of the wall. It appeared to actually be made of jade while the others were made of limestone. This was very unusual. We thought that this very small detail might indicate that the Confederacy of Banah soldiers were hiding more riches behind the wall, so we decided that we would try to blast through it and find out what's within. Upon entering the room, there were several corpses within, insectoid as well as some type of metallic humanoids. There was also a very strange green glowing light machine in the center of the room. Carol believed that these humanoids were just people wearing some type of strange armor. However, Reek was quick to point out that he had read about some type of creature like this in a book once. He said that they were referred to as automatons from an ancient world, and he just assumed that it was fantasy. But the similarities between the two are very uncanny. He stated they should take some back to the base, that way Blitz could try and study them, so they began to take one. As they approached and picked up the automaton, the thing in the center of the room began beeping. Luckily, we managed to take cover, but the initial explosion was so hot that anything flammable within its vicinity was caught on fire. We did manage to escape with one of the automatons, but the others appeared to have been incinerated in the initial explosion as well. The heat from the blast so close disintegrated them. But we returned home safe and sound shortly thereafter in our helicopter. Reek quickly scooped up the automaton and began taking it to, well, what is currently a decimated building, but we plan on turning this building into Blitz's laboratory and or research facility. The rebel soldiers are going to be staying with us for quite some time until Sherd returns home. Assuming she returns home, we still have no idea what's happened to her and the others, so until then we should at least make sure they have the proper facilities to do their work, and also make sure that they're quite comfortable here. Blitz was kind enough to go from his day-to-day work to immediately researching the automaton for us. He first began looking through some old books and whatnot that Reek was describing to him and that he had on his person, as he loves to read. These books had several descriptions as to what the automatons looked like, sounded like, and what their purpose may have been. Once again though, these were previously thought to be nothing but works of fantasy. It is very possible that ancient peoples lived in harmony with these very strange metallic creatures, or maybe ancient peoples even created them. Reek and Nicholas decided to relax one evening and sit down for a nice calming game of chess together. Their first topic of discussion was Hack, and Reek was quick to mention that he knew Hack when he was just a small baby and a very small child, and he looked up to him something like an uncle. So of course he is extremely mournful and saddened by his death on the battlefield. But speaking of battlefields, we ended up receiving contact from Rebel intelligence stating they saw a large Thromboian force just outside the Farming Empire territory. No doubt the Confederacy of Banah coming to try and raid us over us attacking their base and stealing that automaton. It was quite alright, of course, nothing we couldn't handle. Carol thanked them for the information and stated that we would be ready when they arrived. They were about a day or so just outside the territory. Carol would then proceed to let Reek, Blitz, and Nicholas know what was going on. That way they could all prepare a strategy just in case this force is extremely large or heavily equipped. As night fell on the Farming Empire, we prepared for this battle. The Confederacy of Banah could arrive at any moment, just waiting to try and catch us off guard. To ensure that such a scenario would not happen, we had one person at each of our entrances and one person in each guard tower as well. Even Carol herself would man one of the guard towers after lying young Spyro down for bed just after feeding him. Carol said to herself, "There will be no surprises tonight. The Confederacy of Banah shall not get the jump on us." Little did she know there was a surprise in store, but not like she thought. You see, the Confederacy of Banah never arrived, but the Blue Stork tribe did. We were shocked to see their armor and their weapons glistening in the moonlight. And throughout the small crowd in the raiding force, we also spotted two familiar sets of armor and faces. Harris and Lot stood in the middle of the raiding party. We had been expecting a raiding party to arrive, but we thought for sure the Confederacy of Banah would arrive with many of our tribespeople as slaves or even as prisoners so that they could try to use them as leverage in some type of deal or basically just ransom them to us, but we did not expect this. Carol kept on thinking about how angry Chief Shirt is going to be when she hears about this. Assuming that she is still alive, she thought that it may be possible that Harris and Lot had double-crossed her and Hack, and that they were dead. As the raiding party approached the Farming Empire, Carol swore on Hack's grave that she would make the two of them answer for this. The Blue Stork tribe warriors began trying to rush us, and we began firing down upon them. We easily killed several of their tribespeople as they approached our entrance, but thankfully we managed to down Harris without killing him, and just as well as Lot approached, we done the same to her. As we shot her down next to our defenses, our anger bubbled up when we thought about just executing her on the spot, but no, she had much to answer for. We would interrogate her. As Reek hauled Lot off as well as Harris to the prison, we began to realize this was not the massive raiding force that Rebel intelligence had told us about. This was most likely a small scouting party. Later on, after Carol and a few of the others had tended to their wounds, she decided to enter the prison to interrogate the two of them. And by interrogate, I mean she beat the shit out of Lot until she spilled her guts about everything that had happened. And I mean everything. Carol was shocked to hear that Chief Sherd had turned her back on her own tribe. There was no excuse for the crimes that Lot and Harris had committed. This was nothing short of treason. A betrayal so disgusting that they would sit there and watch as Hack was murdered, their friend, their tribe's member. The only just punishment for this was death. As a sign of great disrespect, as well as a message to those Blue Stork tribe scouts sitting and watching from the tree line, we decided to burn their bodies. Let them run back to their village and tell Chief Sherd what they had seen here today. How easily their Thromboian forces had been defeated by Carol and a few rebels. Let them come back and try again For the farming empire is now part of the Rebel Alliance, and we now fly these glorious, beautiful banners and flags in honor of our great leader tree. For the Rebel Alliance is a force to be reckoned with. We will fight the Marshals, and we will fight the coalition of Thromboian tribes. Our power knows no bounds, and our research will shape this planet for the better. Many years ago, when I was just a small child, my mother had passed away from the flu. It was just my father and I, and unfortunately we were very, very poor. Devastated by my mother's passing, my father struggled to take care of us. He struggled to even feed us at times, so you could imagine my surprise when I heard the news that we were going to Mossport City. I had never even seen the ocean. He sat me down at a small table just outside a tavern. I began to ask him what we were doing in this big city. He said we were simply here to make some quick silver before returning home. I was so excited by the idea of having money once again. We might finally be able to buy enough ingredients for some soup or even stew. My father said we'd be meeting a man by the dock, so we made our way there. The man introduced himself as a captain to my father, but he didn't look like any Royal Navy captain that I had ever read about. My father and the captain began discussing prices for the product, but I was unsure as to what they were talking about. Before I knew it though, the captain had given my father 45 pieces of silver. This was all my life was worth to my father. My father sold me to a pirate to become part of his crew, as if I were some pet or piece of property. But alas, as a small child, there was nothing I could do. I barely understood what was even happening. I was just sad to see my father walk away without even making another glance at me. But with time, I would indeed become a pirate. Not just any pirate though. A damn good pirate. Captain Stiper took me in as one of his own. He taught me everything that I knew about being a pirate, and I had swore to myself with all that I had learned and who I had become that I would now make my father pay. We sailed the seas looking for those who we could plunder, and believe you me, we found many Royal Navy ships during this time. Funny enough, those with riches were never too keen on giving it up without a fight. That was no problem though, as we didn't mind getting our hands dirty for it, and we killed many who we believed were deserving of it. But we also killed many who were not. And I am not always proud of the things that I have done. But our plundering continued day after day, week after week, all throughout the years. I remember one year during the early spring, the snow had just thawed from the ground. We approached a small tavern in the outskirts of a lesser-known village. We were all extremely thirsty. We hadn't had a good beer in weeks. As we sat down at a table, we overheard the barkeep discussing with an older-looking gentleman. The man said he had no home and he had nowhere to go. Well, the barkeep told him that he couldn't stay there, to which he replied that it didn't matter, he didn't have any silver anyhow, he'd also been looking for work in the area. The barkeep mentioned a very small logging company that had just started. Looked like there was only one gentleman working there if he were interested. He thanked the barkeep for his information and then proceeded to leave the tavern. I explained to my crew that the description the barkeep gave sounded an awful lot like my father, and knowing him, no doubt he's got plenty of silver tucked away. We got up from our table and Captain Stiper decided he would question the barkeep. I still remember his face. He told us everything he knew. He really did. He told us everything. But the captain insisted that if we left the barkeep behind, that he might alert my father to what we had planned. After several failed attempts to defeat my father and his men, I decided I would no longer pursue my revenge, and that a life of plunder was not one for me. For years I would be on my own, but I supposed that is the price I would pay for my years of evil doings. One early morning I was walking to a nearby village. I came upon a young girl who was standing alone in the road, alone. Just as I was when I was a child, I thought. I asked her where her parents were, and she said that her mother had died long ago, but her father had recently been killed in a raid. She said he was a chieftain of their village, but that village was no more. The young girl introduced herself. Her name was Sherd. Welcome back, one and all, to our RimWorld farming empire, where everyone is sleeping safe and sound. For now. Unfortunately, everyone's beautiful slumbers would not last for very much longer, though. Unfortunately, while we were all sleeping sound in our beds, there was a bit of commotion outside. It appeared to be coming from Blitz's laboratory. The noise awoke Carol, and she ran outside to investigate. All at once, Blitz flew by her and hit the side of a building. Oh dear God. The automaton is awake. Blitz and Carol both ran for cover as fast as possible. The machine immediately began raining down hellfire upon them. The two of them hid in doorways and behind walls, getting several lucky shots in on the machine. All at once the machine turned and began to try and leave the city, almost as if it was being called away. But Reek came up from behind and shot it in the back, right in the fuel cell. With immense damage to the automaton's fuel cell, the fuel cell became unstable, as did the automaton, causing it to detonate. Thankfully, though, no one was nearby when it exploded. With the immediate threat dealt with, Reek immediately went to the telegraph to contact the other rebels to let them know what's going on. He was able to get into contact with his father, Shortus, but to Reek's surprise, his father was already aware. He stated that Regime Radio was already reporting on several different attacks from automatons, and just as well, many of their rebel bases were under attack by the Blue Stork tribe. We had no idea exactly what was going on, what was causing the automatons to come to life, but we knew that it was happening and we knew they were extremely dangerous. One of the very first things we decided to do was build a machining table. This way we can actually begin building our very own armor here within the city. And that's exactly what we began commissioning Blitz and Carol to begin doing. Now, the very first order of business with armor is going to be Carol. Carol has always throughout this series been severely under-armored. And that is why I have made made the executive decision to add a new mod to the mod list for this series. Thanks to Blitz's cutting-edge Rebel research as well as the Ancient Fallout Armory mod, we have a brand new armor to bestow upon Carol. This will keep her much safer than any previous technologies in terms of flak armor. This lightweight, cutting-edge technology could also be circulated through the Rebel ranks as well, saving several lives. It is truly a blessing upon Carol as well as the Rebel Alliance in general. Just another instance, of course, though, of Blitz's wonderful research into these technologies. Now, protecting ourselves with armor is a top priority, however, we also need to be able to defend the city as a whole. So I've decided to take note of comment by our good friend known as Just Call Me Gamer, who says we should build a pillbox within the mountains of the farming empire. So that is exactly what we're going to be doing. We're having Blitz carve out a section of the northeastern mountain for two separate pillboxes within the small hill. Unfortunately though, while Blitz was mining out this section, we ended up having a raid from the Blue Plain Bandits once again. It would appear those that escaped in the last raid have told their comrades about our low manpower here at the farming empire. And unfortunately for us, the massive holes that we've dug through our mountain have left us very vulnerable to an attack by bandits or basically anyone at this time. Due to our vulnerability, we thought that it may be best to attempt at the very least to build some sort of defenses around these holes in the mountain so that the bandits can't just walk right through. However, when Carol stepped out to do so, she was immediately met with gunfire. We decided that maybe Blitz should try his luck with it as well to assist her, but unfortunately the same was true for him, and then the bandits began their assault on the farming empire. Blitz immediately began returning fire against the bandits and began running through the halls of the hill. The bandits, of course, wasted no time attempting to rush our defenses and our men. Thankfully, even though the majority of the bandits were trying to come through the pillboxes that we were digging through the mountain, some of them actually went around our walls to try and flank us from the side. Little did they know this is exactly what we were hoping for, as we could not take the bandits on all at once from the front. We could see the fear in the bandits' eyes as they took a swift beating from the few soldiers that we had. They may have outmanned us by quite a bit, but they sure as hell would not outgun us. We killed as many of them as humanly possible before we began making our way through our city looking for any stragglers. We found quite a few of them in the city attempting to set the buildings on fire, and it's a good thing we got there when we did, otherwise baby Spyro may have been lit on fire and killed. One foolish chap by the name of Teresa attempted to take all four of us on at once, but she had a rude awakening when we beat the absolute hell out of her. Just as well, we had killed several of these bandits, but those of which that we did not, we decided to take prisoner and attempt to rehabilitate them, because that's just the type of good, moral colony that we are here at the farming empire. Besides, we could really use all the help we could get with these automatons coming to life all of a sudden. Unfortunately, due to wounds sustained in battle, Blitz ended up getting an infection in his right shoulder. Normally, I don't bring up infections or sickness throughout these series unless they actually mean something, and this infection was damn near deadly. As Blitz was recovering from the infection, it came that time of year for us to celebrate Carol's father, Birch, with a lantern ceremony. As we all are aware, of course, the rebels don't exactly respect Birch, with the exception of Happy Oak, as the two of them were friends long ago. However, they are quite accommodating, given that Carol is now the leader of the farming empire, and they are her guests, essentially. Not too long after the lantern ceremony had concluded, we decided to check back in with Blitz on his infection. As you can see, it was an extremely close call. We had decided that we would not amputate the arm, as he was very close to developing immunity, but he was cutting it very, very close. Just as well, Blitz is a bit of a roughneck, and he's not exactly too keen on having a limb chopped off. Once he had finally developed immunity though, and he was feeling quite a bit better, he once again began his crucial work on the pillboxes within the northeastern mountain. He had even began building some PM night 1910 mounted machine gun turrets, which are admittedly a martial design of a weapon, but they would work perfectly against automatons as well as bandits. But we didn't exactly care about stealing ideas from the Marshal Service, given the fact that there's a possible automaton robotic apocalypse dawning over the planet. We thought it might be best for us all to share these technologies. I mean, it's not as if the Marshal Service is aware that we have the blueprints to their mounted machine gun turrets, though. We would have asked them, but our spies didn't take enough time when stealing the blueprints to sit around and chat with them. A few days had passed by this point, and we were getting closer and closer to recruiting the two bandits that had attacked us, Jen and Lewis. So we decided that they most likely are going to need a comfortable place to sleep once they decide to join the Rebel Alliance. Carol requested that Blitz dig out a section of the mountain next to our crypt for 3 bedrooms for 3 upcoming recruits. Currently, we only have Jen and Lewis, but of course at some point we'll most likely have another person. The bedrooms would take quite a bit of time as we had to mine out every single piece of stone to build them, and just as well take that stone, refine it, and begin making flooring and smooth the walls, etc, etc, you understand. But once the bedrooms were finally finished, they looked quite okay, I guess. They weren't perfect, but they would keep them happy as they had high beauty rankings with the rugs and things like that. I just think with future series I would like to try out some new furniture, as we're always using the gloomy furniture mod. Now don't get me wrong, I love it, but I like to try new things. At one point I realized that we've been focusing on armoring Carol as well as working on defenses for the city, but something we haven't been working on that we should is armor and protection for our animals. And our animals very well may become a crucial part of our defense, given the fact that our helicopter does not have any weapons on board. We had Blitz make some large steel animal armor, and I picked a beautiful stallion out for Carol. I decided that we would name the stallion Zeus, a very powerful and fitting name for such a powerful stallion. Zeus is simply the beginning, though, of our plans to begin equipping at least a horse for every soldier that we have with some decent armor. If not decent armor, we could at the very least do wood. It's better than nothing. But for now, we're settling with just Zeus, of course, and might I just say that he looks mighty beautiful and very powerful, just as well with Carol on his back in her very brand new armor. But as we were making several improvements to ourselves, our animals, and to our farming Empire City as a whole, we ended up getting a telegram from the Rebel Alliance. It was Shortus, and he was contacting us about an ongoing raid at a local rebel city by the Blue Stork tribe. He stated that they were running very low on resources such as herbal medicine, food, as well as fuel. He stated that they had plenty of manpower, they simply didn't have the means to feed them, doctor them, and they didn't have enough fuel for their generators, unfortunately. Carol reassured Shortus that they would be there as soon as humanly possible, and she would immediately begin work on gathering these supplies. Shortus thanked her for her support, as he stated they assumed the city would be under siege for several weeks. As the other rebel soldiers began gathering up herbal medicine and fuel to stuff into the helicopter, Carol began preparing several meals for the soldiers. Just in case their generators were to go out and they had no fuel for campfires and they were unable to cook for themselves, she would go ahead and have this done. Blitz and Nicholas began loading up all of the meals that Carol had created for the rebel soldiers, as well as any last bits of fuel and herbal medicine that they had. Once the two of them were finally finished loading all of this into the helicopter, they then themselves got in the helicopter and prepared for takeoff to head towards the rebel city. As we returned home, we discussed how horrific the battlefield looked, but we tried to reassure ourselves that Shortus had reassured us they had plenty of manpower to handle it. Not long after returning home, Carol successfully recruited Jinjin. She has now decided to join us here at the Farming Empire and become part of the Rebel Alliance, which is great because Jinjin here has some wonderful skills, most notable of which is her plant skill, which is going to come in handy in a place called the Farming Empire, obviously. If you ask me, I think she is going to make a more than wonderful addition to our Farming Empire, as well as the Rebel Alliance. She's so good with plants, I think I'm going to call her Plant Mom. But our wonderful Plant Mom's room needs a bit of sprucing up. The rooms are okay, we have all the furniture built, but we're going to have to begin smoothing the walls so that they don't look disgusting and horrible. Just as well, though, we are going to have to continue our crucial work into our defenses, such as spike traps around our pillboxes, our doorways, and other vulnerable points. Not only are we building spike traps, but we're also going to be building plenty of barbed wire around our entrances as well. Luckily, we have a plentiful supply of steel. Now, of course, bandits, the marshal service, soldiers, as well as several other enemies that we have are going to be smart enough to not walk right through barbed wire, so it's not exactly what we're using it for. We're actually going to use it as a deterrent of where we do not want them to walk, and that way we force them to walk through our spike traps. But by this point, the Farming Empire has truly come a long way, especially from what it was back in the Logging Empire days. It was beautiful then, but it is especially beautiful now, especially with all of our new defenses, not just barbed wire and whatnot, but I'm talking about the peel boxes, as well as our defense towers and things like that. And I absolutely love it, and I hope you guys do too. And my only hope is that we can continue to preserve it and ourselves. Welcome back, one and all, to the RimWorld Farming Empire, where we are still diligently working on defenses such as armor for ourselves and our animals. As we have previously mentioned, war is coming to the Farming Empire, and there is no way we can stop it. We can only defend ourselves. So that is why today, not only are we going to be working on armors and other types of defenses and whatnot around the Farming Empire, we are also building an armory to keep new weapons and armors in. Now, this may seem a little bit silly since we already have a warehouse, but keeping our weapons and armor organized is going to be crucial for making sure we can respond to a threat in a timely manner. However, with that being said, the current weapons that we have aren't exactly ideal for fighting off Sherd and her robot army. So naturally, we're going to have to do a little bit of trading and whatnot and purchasing of new weapons. As for our armor, though, that was coming along quite nicely. We were getting a few sets of steel armor created for everyone. This armor wasn't near as good as Carol's, but it was the next best thing, and they were fairly cheap to make as well. Now, with that being said, even though the armors for ourselves and our animals were fairly cheap to make, we were still beginning to run a little bit low on resources. So not all of our horses got steel armor. Some of them actually had to have wood armor, which was obviously not very ideal because because the horse would die very quickly if we were riding it into battle, but it was the best that we could do. And thankfully we had managed to secure enough armor for at least one horse per person throughout the city. Defending ourselves though of course comes down to more than just good armor. We're going to need weapons because the best defense is a good offense. So it was decided that Blitz would go on a trade mission to a local settlement to try and find weapons. He of course immediately began loading up all of our weapons that we currently have as well as other resources to trade and sell. After finally loading everything up into the helicopter, Blitz took off into the sky to go on his trading mission. There's been talk for some time that this local settlement has been harboring stolen Marshal Service weapons, so it's time for us to put that theory to good use. And lucky enough for us, it would appear that our intel was correct and we managed to purchase a machine gun rifle, 2 rocket launchers, as well as a set of grenades. The rocket launchers would of course help us with any possible Marshal Service air raids. Sometime later, we have finally managed to recruit the bandit that attacked us previously, known as Lewis. Good old Lewis here was a large hunk of pork man, and I think that he'll make a wonderful addition to the team as well as protecting his new home, especially given the fact that he has brand new weapons and armor that he can arm himself to the teeth with. Given his skills with the flintlock rifle, I can't wait to see what he does with a machine gun. That is one handsome, spicy hog man. Sheesh. Now, given the possibility of air raids from the Marshal Service and bombings and whatnot, I thought that it may be best for us to create something like a fallout shelter in one of the hills of the farming empire. Now, with that being said, of course, this fallout shelter is not designed for everyone. It is simply for baby Spyro as well as someone else. If we were to make it too much larger, that could compromise the integrity of the entire shelter. And we never knew when the attack could begin. Sure, the Blue Stork tribe was at war with the rebels and the marshals and attacking their corresponding cities, but Sherd was rarely ever seen. There was always the possibility that she lay lurking just beyond the tree line with her automaton army. We would have to ensure that we were always ready, day or night, anytime. Although we had become quite weary of traveling traders as they could be in cahoots with the Blue Stork tribe or the Marshal Service, we did decide to trade with a combat supplier who had came. And we're very happy that we did because they had plenty of reinforced barrels so we could build artillery cannons as well as the ammunition for them. Artillery cannons, of course, are extremely useful, not only against ground units, but with enough skill and a well-placed shot, you could take down a Marshal helicopter or plane. So it goes without saying that we immediately began working on 2 large artillery cannons for the city. However, while we here at the Farming Empire were preparing for a long and drawn-out battle, the rebels were working on other plans. Tree and her escort met with General Hawthorne and Commander Ross in the desert. She had requested a meeting with them to discuss temporary peace talks. It is very much worth noting that this is the first time since the war began that there were actually diplomatic talks like this between the rebels and the Marshal Service, which truly stresses just how dangerous Sherd and her automatons are. To summarize how the meeting went, Commander Ross essentially told Tree and the others that they were able to track Sherd's every movement and they knew exactly where she was. But because of the ongoing attacks and the ongoing war, they were unable to spare enough manpower to attack Sherd head on. Commander Ross stated that with rebel assistance fighting side by side, they could make a big enough dent in Sherd's forces to get to her to kill her. However, of course, there was a catch. The rebels would also have to agree to turn over any stolen weapons and ammunition that they had taken from the Marshal Service, which would absolutely cripple the rebel alliance. Thus, Tree denied this. Unfortunately, Commander Ross would not agree to any other terms, and the meeting ended when Tree and her escort angrily stormed away. Shockingly, though, General Hawthorne approached Commander Ross just after the meeting. He requested to join the rebels in battle alone for the sake of his daughter, so that he could finally end this and could see her. Back home, Carol received word from Tree and the others about how the peace talks went, and of course, received the unfortunate news. She stated that they were sending rebel reinforcements to the farming empire, but it would most likely be a few days before they actually arrive. She explained that Happy Oak and Lurcott were en route on foot as they were nearby not too long ago, but unfortunately, Happy Oak had suffered a massive heart attack. He is doing fine, but of course, he is in very critical condition at this time. Thus, the farming empire will be on its own until reinforcements arrive. Carol thanked Tree for everything, for contacting her as well as sending reinforcements, and we understood that we very well may have to face this threat alone if Sherd and her forces were to come before them. She also sent her best wishes and prayers for Happy Oak as well, in the hopes that he will recover from this very quickly, and hopes, of course, that he feels better very soon. This is what we have been preparing for this entire time. We have contingency plans in place in case rebel reinforcements do not arrive in time. We are and always have been prepared to defend our home, our city, to our last breath if need be. And if we have to do it without any assistance, then that is how it has to be. And if we have to die during battle defending this place, then so be it, because we deserve our freedom and we will not back down to a tyrant. With tensions between the Rebel Alliance and the Marshal Service becoming much worse, and us of course being a territory of the Rebel Alliance, we decided that we would all arm ourselves to the teeth in preparation. We had no idea who would be coming first. It very well could be Sherd and her large mass of automatons, or it could very well be Commander Ross and his army of fascists who were coming to try and extinguish the flames of rebellion. Regardless of our enemies though, we would stand tall. And even though we had a massive lack of manpower, with our entire city only being populated by 6 able fighters, with our new weapons and armor, we were ready to take on anyone that stood in our way. Some time later, we ended up having a caravan from the Confederacy of Banah arrive nearby, but they weren't attacking us. They weren't even interested, it appeared, in raiding us. We thought it possible that maybe their people were starving and they were coming to the farming empire to plead for supplies and food, but this was not the case at all. Their chief approached and began to speak with Carol. He explained that their scouts had spotted Sherd and her forces just outside the farming empire territory preparing to attack, and that he and the Confederacy of Banah would stand behind us during this battle. He explained that he and his tribe have always hated us, but they hate the coalition of Thromboian tribes and Sherd much, much more. With the impending raid coming very soon, Carol quickly scooped up baby Spyro and rushed him to the fallout shelter. She swore to Hack that she would protect this child with her life, and she very much intended to. She was Hack's friend, and she is now this child's protector, and no one is going to make it into this fallout shelter alive. The Confederacy of Banah's small raiding party, as well as Carol and our rebel soldiers, all gathered in the town. The chief said that he was unable to convince the other chieftains to send more troops, unfortunately, so we'll have to make do with what we have. The battle had been raging for hours. The tribespeople from the Confederacy of Banah fought fiercely alongside our rebel soldiers, but the onslaught from the Blue Stork tribe continued. No matter how hard we pushed, they would continue pushing back even harder with their automatons as well as their soldiers. Carol, as well as our other rebel soldiers, mounted their horses and began charging them directly. They were completely determined on breaking through the enemy lines to get through to get a clear shot at Sherd, because if we could take out Sherd, we could end this right now. As the battle raged on, our horses galloped through the blood-soaked snow. There were quite literally fields of corpses and automatons burning. After we had finally got closer to Sherd, a group of automatons approached us with heavy rockets. When Reek opened his eyes, there was blood everywhere. The horses lay dead on the ground or severely injured, and we were all pinned down by heavy gunfire. He was so numb that he couldn't move, and all he could do is watch as Lewis was shot down and Jin took his grenades to try and fight off the automatons. Carol began firing rockets as well, but there were just too many of them, and unfortunately after a while she was the only one left standing. We were all injured and bleeding very badly. We were beginning to run out of options. General Hawthorne had finally cornered Sherd. She had nowhere left to run, and there was only one thing left to do. After gunning Sherd down on the battlefield, Hawthorne decided to strip her of her armor and especially of her helmet, the one thing that he actually took when he left. With Sherd dead and the neuro link between her and her helmet no more, all of her automatons fell on the battlefield. What little remaining soldiers she actually had surrendered to us or began to run away. But our victory in this grand battle was not without its cost. Blitz paid dearly with his life. Unfortunately, one of the androids had damaged the artillery cannons, causing it to detonate, killing the androids and several soldiers, but also Blitz. Luckily, Carol, Reek, and Jin, though, would make it out alive. Days later, once we had patched ourselves up from our injuries, we began the burials and the funerals of Blitz and Lewis, two mighty, courageous, and brave souls who stood in the face of tyranny, and they did not back down. They have paid the ultimate price, but if they were here today, they would tell you that they would do it all again, because standing up against evil and injustice is what they always stood for. Unfortunately, Happy Oak's condition did not get any better. He and his old heart have gotten much weaker, unfortunately. So weak, in fact, that extreme infections are commonplace at this point, and he's simply just not getting any better. All of his friends and loved ones, including his adoptive son Lurkot, joined him for one last goodbye. I love you, son. And I love you, Dad. Welcome home, Happy Oak. You can rest easy now, and you're among good company.